Jack Fletcher wasn't supposed to be here. Not really. He should have been back on Earth, filing procurement paperwork for the United Nations Space Agency like he'd done for the past 7 years. But when humanity's first contact came in the form of a massive, crystalline ship that parked itself neatly in Earth's orbit, the aliens had specifically requested a non-essential bureaucratic functionary for their diplomatic team. The UN, never missing an opportunity to offload paperwork, had volunteered Jack faster than he could say unpaid overtime. So here he was aboard the Galactic Council flagship Harmonious Integration, surrounded by beings that looked like they'd crawled out of a fever dream collaboration between HR. Edgar and Lisa Frank. Human Fletcher, please restate your spacefaring capabilities, requested Ambassador G.L. Thorpe, a being that resembled a sentient chandelier crossed with a squid. Jack cleared his throat. As I mentioned, we've established colonies on Mars and Europa, with exploratory missions to the Kuiper Belt. Our newest antimatter drives can. Quaint, interrupted Councillor Plex, whose head was a swirling vortex of bioluminescent gas encased in what looked like a fishbowl. Truly charming. Like watching an infant attempt calculus. The 6 other alien representatives made sounds that Jack's translator rendered as laughter. The council chamber, with its impossibly high ceilings and walls that seemed to be made of living tissue, suddenly felt even more oppressive. I just want to confirm, Jack said, trying to keep his voice even. Did you cross 17 light years to make fun of us? Ambassador G.L. Thorpe's tentacles rippled in what the translation matrix identified as patronizing amusement. Human Fletcher, you misunderstand. The Galactic Council welcomes all sentient species, even those at primitive developmental stages. Your kind will make excellent janitors aboard our vessels. Perhaps in a few thousand years you might advance to maintenance technicians. Jack stared at the assemblage of advanced beings. He'd prepared for many scenarios: fear, wonder, complex negotiations, but not cosmic-level condescension. Look, he said, pinching the bridge of his nose. I'm not even mad yet. But you might want to reconsider your approach here. The chamber fell suddenly silent. The translator in Jack's ear made a strange buzzing sound, as if struggling with the concept. Councillor Plex's gaseous head swirled more rapidly. The human claims it is not yet experiencing anger? Fascinating. Our preliminary data suggested humans were emotional creatures with minimal control over their biochemical responses, said another counselor, who looked like an origami creation folded from metallic paper. Ambassador G.L. Thorpe extended a tentacle toward Jack. Human Fletcher, please clarify. You are capable of greater emotional states than your current one? Jack blinked. Well, yeah, you're being kind of rude, but I've dealt with worse at the DMV. The aliens exchanged glances that Jack couldn't begin to interpret. Their movements became more agitated, appendages twitching and colors shifting across spectrums his human eyes could barely perceive. The meeting is adjourned, announced G.L. Thorpe suddenly. Human Fletcher will be escorted to his quarters while the council deliberates. As 2 robotic drones guided Jack from the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Something beyond his understanding. He was right. News travels fast on a ship full of telepaths, empaths, and beings with sensory organs dedicated solely to detecting gossip. By the time Jack finished his synthetic dinner back in his quarters, his casual remark had spread to every deck of the Harmonious Integration. In the cafeteria designated for Class 3 biological entities, Technician Zorm whispered to Pilot Eb Tick. I heard the human said it wasn't even mad yet, implying it possesses anger capabilities beyond our comprehension. That can't be right, Eb Tick replied, her antennae quivering. The preliminary reports classified humans as threat level minimal, barely above space cattle. Those reports were based on their technology, not their biological potential, Zorm countered. What if they're dormant super predators? Think about it, a species evolving on a death world with high gravity and lethal radiation levels. From table to table, deck to deck, ship to ship, the rumor spread and mutated. By the time it reached the private chambers of Commander Kraz Tick of the Galactic Security Force, humanity had transformed from mostly harmless to potentially catastrophic. Kraz Tick, whose species resembled six-limbed panthers with exoskeletons covering strategic parts of their anatomy, paced his quarters. His tail flicked back and forth as he pondered this new information. "Display human physiological data," he commanded. Holograms materialized around him, showing human skeletal structure, musculature, and nervous system. Nothing remarkable for a carbon-based biped except perhaps their unusual endurance and that inefficient cooling system they called sweating. But then there was this phrase, "I'm not even mad yet." Tick's ears flattened against his skull. In his long military career, he'd encountered 67 distinct sentient species, from the crystalline hive minds of Betelgeuse to the gaseous intelligences of the Crab Nebula. None had ever made such a claim about their emotional state, as if it were a weapon. What if it was? Computer, compile all data on human conflict patterns. The display shifted to historical images, primitive humans with spears hunting megafauna many times their size, armored humans on horseback, humans with increasingly sophisticated weaponry, culminating in their brief but terrifying nuclear era. Computer probability analysis. Could human anger trigger physiological transformations not detected in our scans? Insufficient data, replied the ship's AI. Earth entertainment media suggests numerous examples of human transformations triggered by emotional states, including but not limited to Incredible Hulk syndrome, Super Saiyan manifestation, Berserker rage, and... Enough, Tick interrupted. So it's possible. A new opportunity was presenting itself. If humans harbored some latent ability activated by anger, some evolutionary trump card their species had developed, whoever controlled that power would have unprecedented leverage within the Council. Meanwhile, 3 decks below, the Council members were reaching similar, if less ambitious, conclusions. "We must update humanity's threat assessment," insisted Councillor Plex. "If their emotional states include levels beyond what was displayed today, we could be facing an unknown variable." "The humans seemed so restrained," G.L. Thorpe said, tentacles ringing together nervously, as if holding back something terrible. Among the service staff, engineering crew, and even the ship's semi-sentient algae tanks, speculation continued to grow. Jack Fletcher, unremarkable bureaucrat from Earth, had become the most intriguing and potentially terrifying being on the ship. And he was still completely unaware of it. 3 days later, Jack Fletcher found himself in increasingly bizarre situations. First, his quarters were mysteriously downgraded from basic diplomat to barely tolerable. The temperature oscillated between sauna and meat locker. The gravity fluctuated randomly, and something in the ventilation system emitted a noise that sounded exactly like someone saying tax audit. Every 7.3 minutes. Next, his food replicator started producing meals that looked like human cuisine but tasted subtly wrong, ice cream that was slightly warm, coffee that was vaguely meaty, and sandwiches where the bread had been replaced with what appeared to be memory foam. "Is everything satisfactory, Human Fletcher?" asked the ship's AI whenever he complained. "It's fine," Jack would reply with a sigh. "Just some technical issues, I guess." What Jack didn't know was that Commander Tick had implemented what he termed Operation Poke the Bear, a systematic plan to test the human's anger threshold through escalating annoyances. Tick watched the surveillance feeds with growing frustration. Why isn't it working? The human shows minimal emotional response. Perhaps our understanding of human irritation triggers is flawed, suggested his assistant. Then we need an expert, Tick decided. Someone who can study the human more directly. Enter Dr. V. Laura, the Council's foremost xenobiologist, and the only being on the ship who thought this whole situation was utterly ridiculous. V. Laura resembled a tall, slender humanoid with iridescent skin that shifted colors with her mood, currently cycling through shades of exasperated purple. "Commander," she said when summoned to Tick's office, "I must register my objection to this project. There is no scientific evidence suggesting humans possess hidden anger-based capabilities." "Then explain this," Tick countered, playing back Jack's now infamous "I'm not even mad yet" statement. V. Laura's skin turned a dismissive blue. "It's obviously an idiomatic expression. Humans use them constantly. Just yesterday I heard one say they were so hungry they could eat a horse, Yet our scans confirm they lack the jaw displacement necessary for such consumption. Nevertheless, Tick insisted, you will study the human and identify its anger activation sequence. Later that day, Jack was summoned to what he was told was a routine cultural exchange. Instead, he found himself in a laboratory facing Dr. V. Laura. Human Fletcher, she greeted him, her skin a professional shade of teal. I'm Dr. V. Laura. I'll be conducting some simple tests today. Finally, someone normal, Jack sighed. Well, relatively speaking, no offense. None taken. Please have a seat and we'll begin with some word associations. The question started innocuously enough. Traffic? Annoying. Waiting in line? Boring but necessary. Someone eating loudly next to you? Mildly irritating. But they quickly became stranger. Your planet being classified as a pre-sentient breeding ground? Concerning? Being told your species would make excellent pets for Regilian slime dynasties? That seems inappropriate. After 2 hours of increasingly provocative questions with frustratingly measured responses, V. Laura's skin had shifted to a confused yellow-green. Is something wrong with your experiment? Jack asked. Prawn? You're not responding as anticipated, V. Laura admitted. Based on our research into human entertainment media, you should have hulked out by now, whatever that means. Jack laughed. That's not a real thing. It's fiction. V. Laura made a note. Fascinating. So the green muscular transformation is purely imaginary? What about the going Super Saiyan? Also made up. The berserker rage where you bite your shield and foam at the mouth? That might have been a real historical thing, but probably exaggerated and definitely not something modern humans do. V. Laura's skin turned a thoughtful blue. Maybe this whole situation was exactly as absurd as she'd initially thought. A week into the mission, Jack Fletcher found himself strapped to what could only be described as a cross between a dentist's chair and a medieval torture device. This is a standard human compatibility test, V. Laura explained, though her skin had turned the distinct orange-pink that her species displayed when lying. It looks like you're about to extract my molars through my eardrums, Jack observed. Nonsense. We're simply going to expose you to various stimuli and measure your responses. What followed was a sequence of experiences that Jack could only assume were designed by someone whose understanding of humans came exclusively from watching bad reality TV shows. They played sounds of nails on chalkboards, babies crying, and people chewing with their mouths open, a cacophony of minor annoyances that Jack endured with nothing more than a grimace. They showed him visual simulations of traffic jams where every driver cut him off, people talking in movie theaters and printers jamming when he had a deadline. Is this supposed to be making me angry? Jack finally asked, because mostly I'm just confused. V. Laura's skin had shifted to a frustrated burgundy. Your resilience is unexpected. Behind a two-way mirror, Commander Tick watched with mounting impatience. This isn't working. Move to Phase 3. V. Laura's shoulders slumped as she pressed a button on her console. Human Fletcher, we're going to try something more potent. A holographic display appeared before Jack, showing what appeared to be Earth News headlines. Coffee now globally illegal Wi-Fi speeds permanently capped at 56,000 worldwide, all streaming services to include unskippable 30-minute ads. Jack snorted. Nice try, but I know these are fake. Tick slammed his fist on the observation room console. Enough games. Implement the direct approach. Before V. Laura could protest, a mechanical arm descended from the ceiling and hovered near Jack. With mechanical precision, it reached out and knocked over his cup of water, directly onto his lap. Jack jumped slightly. Hey, that was... He didn't get to finish his sentence because the arm then proceeded to poke him repeatedly in the forehead, while a hidden speaker began playing It's a Small World at increasing volume. Dr. V. Laura, Jack said, his voice slightly strained, I'm getting a little annoyed now. The laboratory erupted into chaos. Alarms blared, Red lights flashed. The ship's AI announced in 17 different languages, warning, human emotional cascade detected. Phase 1 anger protocols initiated. Laura's skin turned panic white. This is absurd. He's barely irritated. But the security systems, primed by weeks of speculation and paranoia, had been set to hair-trigger sensitivity. Force fields snapped into place around Jack. Robotic containment units rolled into the laboratory. The ship's gravity increased by 30% in what the emergency systems calculated would slow down an enraged human. What the hell is happening? Jack demanded as he found himself encased in a transparent bubble, soaking wet, with a children's song still playing in the background. In the observation room, Tick bared his teeth in something like a smile. We've done it. Phase 1 achieved. Alert the Council, the human weapon has been activated. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light, which, given the Galactic Council's quantum entanglement communication network, was literally true. Human anger activation sequence initiated. Earth representative enters preliminary rage state. Galactic Council implements species containment protocols. On 17 worlds, civilian populations began precautionary evacuations to underground bunkers. The Earthling Collective recalled all their ships to defensive positions. The Hylar Dominion put their sun-extinguishing weapon on standby, just in case. Meanwhile, Jack Fletcher sat in a high-security containment cell, trying to convince his guards that he was perfectly calm. I'm not angry. I'm confused and slightly damp, but that's it. The translator rendered his words, but the guards' 12-foot-tall crystalline beings chosen specifically because they were theoretically immune to physical attacks maintained their distance. The containment field is holding, one guard reported. The human remains in pre-berserker state. Jack flopped back on his cell's too-small bed and stared at the ceiling. This is the worst diplomatic mission ever. Elsewhere on the ship, Commander Tick was having the best day of his military career. Surrounded by holographic displays showing the panic spreading throughout the galaxy, he dictated messages to various factions. To the Hylar Dominion, the Galactic Security Force has contained the human threat. For appropriate consideration, we might direct its anger toward targets of your choosing. To the Earthling Collective, your border dispute with the Cygnus Alliance could be resolved decisively with our new asset. Terms negotiable. Laura, who had been monitoring the situation with increasing alarm, finally gained access to Tick's command center. Commander, this has gone too far, she insisted, her skin flashing urgent reds and oranges. The human shows no sign of unusual capabilities. This is mass hysteria based on a misunderstood idiom. Tick's tail lashed dangerously. Your scientific timidity is noted, Doctor. But the evidence speaks for itself. Half the Galactic Council has retreated to their emergency bunkers. The other half are bidding for control of the human weapon. Because everyone has lost their minds, Laura countered. Have you even looked at the actual data from the laboratory? His hormone levels barely changed. His vital signs remained within normal parameters. Because he's still in Phase 1, Tick insisted. The preliminary anger state. At that moment, the ship's AI interrupted. Commander, the human is requesting to speak with the Council. It claims to have important information about its anger capabilities. Tick's whiskers twitched with interest. Perhaps it's ready to negotiate. Bring it to the Council chamber under maximum security. In his cell, Jack had finally figured out what was happening. The pieces had come together during his third hour of containment, somewhere between the mandatory calming sounds of Betelgeuse. Soundtrack they were piping into his cell and the delivery of what his translator described as non-provocative nutrient paste. These aliens thought he was some kind of anger bomb waiting to go off, which meant he finally had leverage. The Council chamber had been significantly modified since Jack's last visit. The elegant furniture was gone, replaced by a reinforced containment pod in the center. The Council members themselves attended via holographic projections from what Jack assumed were secure bunkers light years away. Only Commander Tick, Dr. Laura, and a squadron of those crystalline guards were physically present. Human Fletcher, Ambassador G.L. Thorpe's hologram intoned. You wish to address the council regarding your capabilities. Jack stood as straight as he could in his containment field. Yes, I understand there's been some confusion about human anger. Confusion? Counselor Plex's gaseous head swirled anxiously. You explicitly stated you were not even mad yet, indicating capability for greater emotional devastation. That's just an expression, Jack explained. Like saying that's the last straw doesn't actually mean I'm collecting hay. Eve Laura's skin brightened to vindicated blue. As I have been trying to explain. Silence. Commanded Kraz-Tik. The human is clearly attempting to downplay its abilities now that it recognizes its strategic value. Jack sighed deeply. Look, I can prove it. Let me demonstrate actual human anger. A visible ripple of alarm passed through the council. Security alerts blared momentarily before Kraz-Tik raised a paw. You wish to activate your full capabilities? Here? If it will clear up this misunderstanding, yes. After a tense discussion, the council agreed, though they strengthened the containment field to planet cracker levels, just in case. Okay, Jack said, cracking his knuckles. Here goes nothing. He closed his eyes, thought about every minor annoyance he'd endured over the past weeks, added in some choice memories of DMV lines and airline delays, and channeled his best impression of genuine human anger. His face reddened slightly. His brow furrowed. His hands clenched into fists. And then he shouted, with all the passion he could muster, "What the actual hell is wrong with you people?" The council chamber fell silent. The monitoring equipment registered a slight increase in heart rate, elevated blood pressure, and marginally increased adrenaline levels. And that was it. No transformation. No explosion of energy. No reality-warping rage abilities. Just a moderately annoyed human bureaucrat. That's it? Kraz-Tik asked incredulously. That's your ultimate anger state? Pretty much, Jack confirmed, already feeling a bit embarrassed by his outburst. I mean, I could probably get angrier with more provocation, but it wouldn't look much different. Maybe I'd throw something or use stronger language. The council chambers erupted in overlapping conversations. Relief, embarrassment, and no small amount of recrimination flowed freely. Counselor Plex's gaseous form condensed in what appeared to be the equivalent of a blush. We may have overreacted. Our cultural analysis team will be thoroughly restructured, promised G.L. Thorpe. V. Laura's skin had settled into a satisfied teal. Perhaps next time you'll listen to actual scientific evidence instead of jumping to conclusions based on action movies. Commander Kraz-Tik looked the most deflated of all, his grand military ambitions evaporating like morning dew. But your species survived on a death world. You've endured extinction-level events. Surely you possess some hidden advantage? Jack shrugged. We're pretty good at cooperation when we need to be, and we make excellent spreadsheets. The containment field powered down with a faint whine. 6 months later, humanity had been officially welcomed into the Galactic Council with full diplomatic status. As it turned out, the whole incident had worked in Earth's favor. No species wanted to admit how terrified they'd been of a non-existent threat, so they overcompensated with generous trade agreements and technological exchanges. Jack Fletcher, far from returning to his paperwork job, had been promoted to Chief Human Diplomatic Representative. His new office aboard the Harmonious Integration featured a climate control system that actually worked and a food replicator that no longer served memory foam sandwiches. Ambassador G.L. Thorpe floated into Jack's office one afternoon as he was reviewing a trade proposal. Human Fletcher. The Council has been discussing a peculiar human phrase we encountered in our cultural studies. Perhaps you could clarify its meaning. Happy to help, Jack replied. What's the phrase? G.L. Thorpe's tentacles rippled nervously. Something about humans becoming hangry? Our translators suggest it combines hunger with anger, implying some sort of fasting-induced combat mode. Jack pinched the bridge of his nose and tried not to smile. Ambassador, he said carefully, let me explain what that really means. And this time, maybe you'll believe me from the start.